Despite how polarised, something we can all agree on in modern Britain is that people are no longer trusting the referee. Not the police, not the courts, not the politicians, and not even the experts. And when a nation stops trusting its referees, the rules stop meaning much at all. And if you look, you can see it everywhere. In conversations, in headlines, and in that slightly raised eyebrow people now bring to every discussion. It's like something has shifted. Not long ago, Britain ran on a simple assumption that the institutions, however flawed, were fundamentally fair. The courts applied the law, the police enforced it, the media reported the news, politicians governed the country. You didn't have to like them, but you believed they were legitimate. There was a kind of quiet agreement or acquiescence. Things might not have been perfect, but they weren't completely bent. Because not everyone sees this the same way. For many boomers, that trust is still largely intact. They grew up with 3 channels, one version of the news, and a general sense that authority knew what it was doing. You trusted the BBC, you respected the courts, you assumed the police were on your side. Not because they always were, but because there wasn't much competition telling you otherwise. Millennials sit somewhere in the middle. They were told the system worked, just as they started noticing that it occasionally didn't. They still remember trusting things, but they also remember a financial crisis, shifting narratives, and being told, just get on the property ladder, which as it turns out, required a time machine and a modest inheritance. And then there's Gen Z, who never really had trust to begin with. They grew up online, watching everything unfold in real time. Mistakes, contradictions, scandals, no filter, no delay, no polished version of events. They didn't lose trust, they never received it. And once you've seen how the sausage is made, it's quite hard to call it premium. Ask people today what they think of institutions. You'll hear the same phrases again and again. 2-tier justice, political policing, the media lies. They protect their own. Now whether those claims are always true isn't really the point. The point is, enough people believe them. And once enough people believe that, the system stops working as intended, because trust once lost, as I said before on this channel, is one of the hardest things a society can rebuild. Institutions don't just enforce rules, they create belief in the rules. Courts don't just punish criminals, they convince society that justice exists. Police don't just stop crime, they signal that order still holds. But when people begin to think the referees are biased, the rules start to look optional. Societies rarely collapse because people disagree. They collapse when people stop believing the system is fair. When citizens begin to feel that the law protects some people, but not others. And at that point, it's no longer a justice system, it's just a system. Britain always has relied heavily on institutional trust. Unlike many other countries, Britain doesn't rely on revolution. It doesn't rely on charismatic leaders, that's for sure. It doesn't even rely on a written constitution. Instead, it relies on something much older. Tradition, custom, the quiet assumption that things are broadly in order. Or at the very least, not as chaotic as they appear. But once that trust begins to erode, a dangerous cycle forms. Citizens become cynical, institutions become defensive, both sides begin to see each other as enemies. Every decision becomes political, every mistake becomes evidence, and eventually, everything looks intentional. Because when a society stops trusting its referees, every disagreement becomes a contest of power. Because when the referee loses authority, the game doesn't end, it just changes into something else.